about the stories of the day. What we came to really talk about today, at least in the official stories today. All right, we're up on YouTube. Welcome to Mindful Life 31. Yes, we are going well along. It's Mindful Life 31. It's the 3rd of February 2022. Wow, the time is flying. Usually people talk about January taking 1500 days or 150 days, but I found this January was pretty quick. This January flew by. It flew by. So it's not that bad. Okay, so what we came to talk about today, the actual stories we're getting into today, has to do with, unfortunately, the number of women we are seeing murdered and advantaged in our society. And I think there's a reason to highlight this. I think there's good reason to highlight what many of our women go through in our society. And I'll start with the story speaking about one of the more recent tragic incidences where a young lady was killed and her body was dumped nearly in the same place as Andrea Barrett's body was found just about a year ago. And what makes all of this even so much more creepy is that it's nearly around the same time. That ending of January, beginning of February time was around the same time with Andrea Barrett. The memory that I am sure has stuck with a large number of our population. Is it that we have a serial killer? I do not know. And the unfortunate part is I feel sometimes like our police service doesn't know either. That's the unfortunate. I understand for many police inside of the chat that could seem, harsh, but it does kind of seem like that. Where we're trying to figure out something doesn't quite add up in this. Okay. Murdered woman's family wants answers. Of course they do. The family of Keithisha Kojo believes that there are too many unanswered questions surrounding her death. Kojo's body was found on January the 28th off a precipice in the heights of Aripo, but it was only positively identified on Tuesday. A post-mortem is expected to be performed at the Forensic Science Center in Federation Park. Speaking with the media yesterday, Kojo's sister, Roxanne, said that her sibling did not have the easiest of lives. This right here is breaking us all up bad. We are angry and sad and in shock. We don't even know how to feel. She went through so much from since she was young. She endured so much pain and trauma. And despite it, she still wanted to make something of herself. She was still trying to work to provide for her son and herself, so she didn't have to rely on anyone. She was working to be better. She didn't let everything that happened in her past to truly define her. So for this to happen, it's a shocker. She did not deserve that. You see, that last line, she did not deserve that. I'm pretty sure nearly everyone who may have been murdered, their family may say pretty similar things. But to the question and to the wonder of why is it that it seems like so many times when women die, it makes so much more news than when men die. I think that last line has something to do with it. Not that men do deserve to die when they are murdered. No, not at all. But men are more aggressive. That's known. It's one of the most established trait differences. Men are generally more aggressive than women. We spoke before multiple times in this live and in the afterlife, where we speak up sometimes about gender issues too. And when we spoke before about one of the reasons there's a gender pay gap partially because men are less agreeable. And because men are less agreeable, they would go into an office and say, hey, well, this is the amount of money I want. While women are generally more agreeable, that's just a general difference in traits between the genders. This is a general statistical difference. You could obviously there are women who are more disagreeable than men. There are some men who are very high in agreeableness and they're higher than some women, while there are some women who are very high in disagreeableness and they are higher than some men. Obviously, there are differences like that, but I'm speaking in general. And because in general, men are more aggressive, more disagreeable, you tend to see men in more violence. The perpetrators and the victims of violent crimes are by far overrepresented as men. So that's one of the reasons when you look into prisons. If you look at a prison and see that there are way more men in prison than there are women, okay, there's a bias side where it's known that women generally get shorter sentences than men for the same crimes. That is also known. But it's also known that men just commit more violent crimes because it's a matter of probability. Bro, you ever live with a woman? I am married. Nathan, you think women are generally agreeable. Okay, you have to understand what they mean by agreeable. What they mean by agreeable is who is, in a general situation, who is the one that is more likely to allow another view to carry on, another opinion to carry on. It's the reason why there's something called mansplaining. The modern feminists have a problem with mansplaining because what generally happens is that in an office situation, a woman starts, and it's very easy for the less agreeable men to come up in that situation and take over from this woman and start saying what she meant to say. When men here are talking about women are less agreeable, they're talking that women don't. There are many women out there who don't go along with your plan, and that might be true, but that's not what the trait agreeableness necessarily has to do with. If you're looking for who in, no, they're not. No, they are not. If you are looking for the most obstinate people on earth, if you are looking for the people least likely to change their mind about anything, that's going to be men. Society has groomed us into equality rather than equity. Actually, you mean society is trying to groom us into equity rather than equality. Yeah, I don't think they understand the term agreeable, or they're just trying to be difficult in terms of they see some women as just being so disagreeable to them. But that's not what agreeable is talking about. Here, women are by and large more agreeable than men. If you're trying to get someone to change their opinion on something, and you go at 100 men and you go at 100 women, out of those 100 women, you may get 70 women to change their mind. Out of those 100 men, you may get 10 men to change their mind. You want to know an easy way to tell it? I don't know how many of you have dealt with elderly people. You see it very clearly because when you get older, your traits tend to get more rigid. They tend to get more rigid, less flexible. You have less flexibility with the traits that you already possess. If you deal with some elderly folks, you deal with an elderly woman and you deal with an elderly man, and you're trying to get them to do something different. Wow. If you've dealt with some elderly men, they're probably the most stubborn people on earth. The most stubborn people on earth are old men. Nathan Litas are going out there to get KFC. Well, bring back a leg for me. Spicy, please. Stubborn old men. Yes, and here's something. This may be controversial to some people. It may be to some modern people who have a more modern view of things. But that's part of the reason that in many cases you want old men as the top of leadership in many countries, or not countries, in many situations. Many times that was part of the reason, because an old man, once he has gotten into this way that this thing works, he's going to keep it functioning down that road. You don't actually want a leader who flip-flops in decision making too easy. You need a leader actually who sticks to something. And one of the takeaways from that is that those stubborn old men sometimes tend to get too stubborn and too stuck in their ways, and that causes calcification in institutions, etc., etc. But that's part of what you want at a higher level of leadership. So yes, men are more disagreeable. So what you tend to see, all this boils back down to basically when across an entire society, if you're looking at violent actions taking place, you generally tend to see violent actions coming from men way more than they come from women. So the vast majority of the victims, as I said before, of violent crimes are men, while similarly the vast majority of the perpetrators also are men. Men are doing the crime, although they are victims of the crime. And because of that, when women fall victims to violent crime, it's generally at the hands of men. And when you have this situation where a man is literally physically stronger than a woman, something that I've noticed, this is, I think, in this day and age, the ability to adapt quickly at that is more important, as this world is quickly changing now. Yes, adaptability is the key. As you said, adaptability, let's take a little pull off from that. Adaptability is a very interesting thing in terms of biology. You know how they talk about survival of the fittest, and that's what evolution and natural selection is. The survival of the fittest person in the society or in this environment survives. No, that's not actually what natural selection, evolution selects for. It actually selects for the most adaptable, because we live in a dynamic environment. If our environment changes, what you want is the creature, the animal, the being that is most adaptable to the changes would be the one that survives. So it's survival of the most adaptable. So you are very correct. In modern times, what we do need is that adaptability. So going back now, that's why, though, because we do see men, the organism. We do see men as overrepresented in perpetrating violent crimes. When that happens with a woman against a woman, and we see this man is obviously physically stronger than this woman, it is obviously an imbalance. And as human beings, we naturally have a dislike. We naturally have an aversion when we're looking at a situation and we're seeing it unfair. This person has a physical advantage over the other person. And if they're fighting on a physical battlefield with this physical advantage, it's an unfair battle. It's not an even fight. So if two men fight and one dies, you'd be more likely like, well, so be it. That's how it goes sometimes. You win some, you lose some. But if a man fights with a woman and she dies, it isn't a fight where the woman died. It's this man killed the woman. And it feels and looks very abusive. And rightly so, society places some extra emphasis on that. You look at that a little more intently. That is something that is more dangerous. For example, if a woman were to kill a baby, that would attract a lot more attention because there's that imbalance there. The baby cannot physically do the woman any harm, so it's obviously only advantage from one direction. And that is what gives it the more view of a predator-prey relationship. When you look at the violence perpetrated against women, it seems very much like a predator versus prey, where the predator hunts the prey, not based on what the prey did to them. When the lion goes out on the safari and looks for the weak zebra to take down, it's not because that weak zebra did the lion something. That weak zebra didn't hurt the lion's mommy. It didn't cut the lion's mane in his sleep or anything like that. No, it's nothing personal. It's literally nothing personal. He is going out on the field there and he's looking for the one that is easiest for him to catch. And that prey probably never met that lion, never did him anything, never bad talked the lion in a corner somewhere. That prey is innocent. And that's the thing about that predator-prey kind of situation. And that's how it seems with this violence against women. When you see this kind of violence in your society, it tells you that you have predatory men prowling around your society. Men who would be very willing to take quick advantage of situations if they are allowed to do it. The cycle of life is not easy. That's true. Oh, oneness over on Instagram. This man on AP, many levels. That's ability of our genetics. All right. She said her sister we're going back to this story here with the sister of the deceased speaking. She said her sister was from Upper Covine Road, Dago Martin, but moved out several years ago to live with a male friend. Roxanne said she had questions as to why it took so long for her sister to be reported missing. She living with people and no one made a report until the end of the week. She was missing since Monday. And furthermore, why did they make the report at the Maracas police station if she's living with them in Cocorite? There are too many questions surrounding this that just not adding up. That's some suspicious stuff, I find. That's some very suspicious stuff. And the sister actually went into some more detail there that I found over, or you could find it over in the Guardian article. Sister, she was going to meet someone to sign contract for apartment. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Ketisha Kojo, 21, confided in her sister, telling her that she was being beaten, abused, and stalked by a friend. Do you believe we have serial killers in our society? On that question, if I believe there are serial killers, thank you very much, Nigel. I do believe there are serial killers in our society. If there are serial killers in our society, yes, I do believe that. I think our society has quite a few serial killers. When you look at the murders, just the amount of murders going on, I don't think all of those murders is every day. When you see those 2 murders nearly every day, it's all new murderers being minted every day. Every day it's a new murderer being minted in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't think so. I think actually the majority of those murders would actually be repeat offenders, guys who are really experienced in this killing business. And I think, so in that case, I do think we have serial killers in Trinidad and Tobago. What defines a serial killer? Someone who doesn't like cornflakes. I don't know the exact definition, but it would have to do with number and pattern of killing. And yes, a gangster can be a serial killer, actually. Very much so. So yes, the young lady expressed that she was being abused, beaten, and stalked by a friend. Now, I don't like how the newspaper uses the word friend, because if somebody is abusing, beating, and stalking the young lady, that person most certainly is not her friend. When she went missing last week, Monday, Kojo was supposed to meet with someone to sign a contract for an apartment and never met with the person, which sparked suspicions among her family and friends that something dreadful had happened. Yesterday, Kojo's sister, Roxanne, disclosed that her sister's body was found badly decomposed in the face and private regions. I don't know how to feel. I studying her and the things she went through and how she feeling. She was missing the Monday and they find the body the Friday. The police said most likely she died the Monday or Tuesday night. So she very likely would have been dead for a while. But people saying she was last seen in Cocorite on Monday night, Roxanne said. She said people heard scream and cries, but they never did anything. They never called the police. I'm just thinking how my sister cried and no one came to help her. Wow, that's heavy. And the sister is pointing out one of the main curiosities that the sister, yes, the whole story is suspicious. One of the curiosities that the sister was speaking about was the fact that the young lady lives Cocorite. And the report of her being missing was filed in Maracas. Why? I think though from just the on its face, what looks obviously suspicious about this story on its face, I think there should be at least some amount of investigation that could take place here. There seems to be enough information that doesn't quite add up that would lead to some kind of possible investigation, I think. One of Kojo's cousins, who also spoke to the Guardian media, said he doesn't want Kojo's death to be like another young lady who lost her life. I can see it as an open and shut case. I have no faith in the justice system right now, none. But I am pleading for it to be solved. She's a little girl whose life was cut short. Tough. Tough, tough, tough. One woman, Newsday, this is the Newsday article to this same story. Newsday visited Kojo's neighborhood in Harding Place, Cocorite, on Wednesday and spoke with residents who said the news of her death have left them shaken as she was a well-known and loved young member of the community. One woman said while Kojo moved to the area from Diego Martin only 2 years ago, she was known and liked by other residents. I accustomed seeing her around. She was always pleasant to speak and talk with. I just remember seeing her going to work on mornings. Only occasionally I would see her going out. I really hoped there could have been a happier ending to all of this. Another woman who has to be identified as Kojo said, as Christine, said Kojo's death was particularly frightening as she has a daughter the same age. My daughter goes to UE and she doesn't drive, so she has to travel a lot of times. So when I read things like these, it makes my stomach turn. It's not an easy thing having a girl child these days. You do everything to keep them safe. And that's the same point I was making there. When you have this predator-prey style relationship, what you're studying is her child, and they said that in one of the stories where her 3-year-old child keeps asking for their mother, and the family doesn't really know how to explain that to a 3-year-old. That's heart-wrenching. And for another mother who has a child this same young lady's age, and you know your daughter has to go traveling to and fro, and when you get this picture of the predator-prey kind of situation going on, imagine you think of it. I don't mean to trivialize the situation by any means, but think about it on a real. And let's use the analogy I was using, a zebra. If you're a zebra mother and you know you have to send your little zebra, what is a young zebra? Calf? Your little zebra calf or foal, send them to school across a lion pride out there. You know there are lions out there waiting to stalk your little zebra, and they don't need a reason. They don't need an invitation. Your little baby zebra doesn't have to do them anything. Those lions just want to taste that zebra meat, and it doesn't matter what your zebra does. The only thing your zebra could hope to do is avoid them. Now, here's one of the things I kind of have a problem with when we're talking about these kind of things. Regularly, you see many women especially talk about stop telling women what to do and what not to wear and where to go and how to behave, and start telling young men to stop abusing women, stop killing women, stop hurting women. And I agree with that. Tell the young men that. Tell it to your sons. I would tell it to all young men that I see. But I have no say over those predatory young men out there. I cannot stop them from doing what they're doing. The training needed to do that ship has already sailed. They are already in that lion mode. There is nothing that can be done to untrain them right now. So in that case, it makes sense to me that we advise some zebras. Listen, try your utmost best to avoid all places where there may be some lions hanging around, as much as you can. That's the really hard part, yeah. They're like, how she ain't been home and y'all ain't report her. If neighbors hearing screams and cries and no one intervenes in any way at all. For the smaller things, people aren't held accountable, it's swept under the rug. That is true. Wait, I a little late. Is who used to be the child father? They did not specify. I noted that in all of the stories, there wasn't a lot of specifics. They didn't specify who she was living with because the sister said she left home in Diego Martin to live with a male. So she was living with someone. They didn't even say if the person she was living with was the child's father. That wasn't said either. They didn't say if the person who was abusing her was the child's father or the person she was living with. One of the things I found interesting in that bit of information was the sister mentioned that she was being stalked by that friend too. And I don't see it I don't know. I guess it's possible, but I don't see it as being probable that the person you are living with would be stalking you. I just don't see that as being very viable. We have way too many lions. Oof. Someone is saying in the chat there that they should make a law to castrate the rapists. Now, I don't know if I have a problem with that. I probably don't. One of my issues with nearly any really, 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 really strict punishment is that what ends up happening is the state is in control of this, and is the state infallible? That's where I am left whenever I think about a lot of the very severe punishments that some people talk about. False accusations, false imprisonment, and there are people who are innocent in jail. Hey, good night, Empress Rooney. We missed you last night. What's up? There are some innocent people who are in jail. And if the case is that some innocent people can be harmed by this, then how many innocent people would you be okay with? There's something called the Blackstone formulation, I believe, where you would be willing for 100 guilty people to go free so that one innocent person isn't harmed. Now, you could see that in the vice versa, where you may be willing for 100 innocent people to be harmed so that one guilty person may also come to justice. But I don't think that works for society. In a society, if you have it where innocent people can be caught up in being in really terrible justice situations, then you are making it you are decreasing the incentive for people to be good people, because no matter who I am, I could end up being severely punished in this society for it. So you don't want a society where innocent people regularly get caught up in really horrible punishments meant for the guilty. That's not a good thing. And with very strict punishments, that's one of the big worries in it. Do not believe them, Empress Rooney. Do not believe them for a moment in that chat. Now, the thing with some of this back last year, that is what the justice system is for, to stop that. It is to attempt to stop that. But it's people. People run the justice system. Listen, if I could have gotten God himself to come down and run the justice system and it was infallible, then kill who you have to kill, cut off what you have to cut off, and by all means do that. But when you have, for example, we know a former justice who ended up as a justice minister in a cabinet before. And if you go through the work of that justice, that former justice, he was the one who on the campaign trail spoke about he wanted to cut off the head of the serpent, whatever he meant by that. And he's the one who was on the beach the other day trying to show himself like, he's disobeying this rule. Yeah, that was a justice in our country. He was one of those in charge of impartially ascribing justice to the population. Do I want to give people like that the authority to kill people in the death penalty, to castrate people, to remove people's manhood? I don't think I do. I don't think I trust people enough to do that. And especially when there could be political influence inside of there. Wow, that would be scary. That would be very scary. So I'm not sure if I trust people inside of there. You see, there are many people who have been asking for changes all along. Since last year, there were so many vigils, so many protests, so many marches. There were signatures and petitions being signed. And what changed? What changed? That's the difficulty. But on that question, the Attorney General is promising, don't worry, the pepper spray is coming. Attorney General, pepper spray coming. Okay, we are waiting. The process for persons to obtain permits for the use of pepper spray, as well as the importation and sale of the product, is being finalized, says Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi. His comments come in the face of criticism that government and the relevant authorities have not done enough to protect women in this country. On Monday, opposition leader Kamla Prasad Bisessa called on Al-Rawi to answer what was the status of the pepper spray legislation. In response to questions yesterday, the AG said on Tuesday the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service approved the forms which are necessary for the operationalization of pepper spray. This will allow the applications to be made, as well as the importation, sale, and distribution to occur. Wow, it takes so long. Nearly everything the government does takes so long. So many people in the meanwhile may be thinking, well, what could have happened if someone had that pepper spray? And pepper spray, the thing with pepper spray, I think that could cause some serious complications all around. Because if you have ever experienced pepper spray, if you spray pepper spray in a room, everybody in that room has to get out. Even, not just the person you targeted it at, everyone has to get out. So, pepper spray could be serious. And many people do actually make it so. And because of that, I could see pepper spray as being a plausible defensive strategy. I really disliked when they were talking, the discussions around pepper spray, and they were talking about, well, we have to be really careful about the pepper spray we legalize because, you know, the criminal elements are going to use pepper spray, you know. You don't want the criminals to get their hands on pepper spray. Like, what nonsense are we talking about? Trinidadian criminals coming with you with a gun. They're coming at you with a gun. If they have a gun, you think they're going to go backwards to get a pepper spray, to pull out a pepper spray and tell you, hey, give me your money on your phone, boy. That is not going to happen. They have guns already. And that was the big discussion, you know. We have to be really careful. The criminal elements may get their hands on pepper. Like, what? What? Those who are familiar with the lies may be familiar with my stance when it comes to the owning of weapons by the population, by the citizens. I don't like how many in governance like to make it seem like once we have to really be careful about letting other people own weapons, you know, that may make it really dangerous for society. And who really needs these weapons to protect themselves while all of them at that level have someone protecting them armed? All of them at that level have armed people protecting them. And I wouldn't doubt some of them at that level have armed people protecting their children. So their little zebra, when their little zebra crosses the grassland, when their little zebra crosses the Serengeti, the lions have to watch them and watch them go aside because their little zebras have elephants surrounding them. They have protection for their little zebras. But your little zebras, we have to think really hard about allowing you to protect your little zebras. You know, this legislation, we really have to ponder on this really seriously. Listen, I think if someone, God forbid, but if someone in the Prime Minister's family was harmed, within a week, there would be some security changes to make sure such a thing doesn't happen easily again. But someone in the general population is harmed, pepper spray like firearms only help if you hyper-vigilant. Yes, that is true. It doesn't, maybe we will breed more startup criminals. It isn't necessarily an obvious solution. Many of the other cases where people have fallen prey to criminals, they may still fall prey to criminals even if they have pepper spray. That's truth. Not mob justice, but teaching our children morals and right thinking. I remember that. A man's phone got stolen and it was performance by the TTPS. I remember that. A certain someone's son. And that's the same someone who was like, well, they ain't rioting yet. That man is not a very likable character. But a certain someone's son got their phone stolen, and within short time, did it even make 24 hours before he got it back? Imagine that. Our police are so effective. Amazing. What's the one problem, Just Scary? What's the one problem? My goal is to leave this country. I don't see things getting better. Leave it and go where, though? Where would be so much better? Anywhere better. That is not true. That is not true. There are many places much worse than Trinidad. So, no, anywhere is not better. And if you're talking in the US, there are some cities in the US more violent than Trinidad currently. They are seeing some really tough things with violence over in the United States. They are seeing some... Over the last 2 years, many of the major cities in the United States have seen an absolute explosion in violence because they have a lot of prosecutors right now. They are progressives in the United States who have a political view called progressivism. They're attempting to push society forward into the future, and their view is that we have to reform criminal justice. And how they are reforming criminal justice is a lot of them are getting into prosecutors' offices. And now bear in mind, prosecutors are the ones oftentimes who selects what they charge someone with, if they are going to charge someone, how they are going to charge someone. And they are not prosecuting people. Over in California, they passed a policy where they won't prosecute anyone for any theft under $990 or something like that. And the obvious happened. California has robberies like if it's normal, this is what we do. Just walk into a store, scoop a lot of things into my bag and just walk out. Because no one is bothered. The guy who drove through the Christmas parade at the end of last year. There was a Christmas parade, a guy drove through the parade, killing several people, injuring many more. He was released after having beaten his girlfriend, after having been charged with pedophile-like offenses. He was released by one of those same prosecutors because we are trying to reform the criminal justice system. These people don't belong in jails. They don't belong in jails. They must be released. So we aren't prosecuting petty crimes, and petty crimes are defined really weirdly. So yeah, you go into some of those United States large cities where you don't have a gun, you cannot get armed there either. No, although they have weapons over in the United States, they have a Second Amendment where you can be free to be armed. That Second Amendment doesn't seem to work in most of their largest cities. So you are going to go into those cities. You are not going to be armed. Their police service is right now kind of fictitious with the government because they have been getting constant media barrages in the negative for the last 5 years, and then you have prosecutors in office who do not want to prosecute crime. And yeah, you go into those cities and think, yeah, it's going to be all peachy. Oh, Canada seems better. Well, right now there was a 50-mile long caravan, a convoy going to Canada's capital. Right now they're in the capital. You may not be able to hear yourself think right now in Ottawa because the truck horns are blaring honk, honk, honk at a constant because they don't like the dictatorial tendencies, well, not dictatorial, authoritarian tendencies that their current Prime Minister, good old Justin Trudeau, is heading down. By the way, do you know who Justin Trudeau holds very high in esteem and wants to emulate? China, with their style of authoritarianism. So yes, go over to Canada by all means and fall right into some of the further authoritarianism developing over there. Nowhere is a bed of roses. Nowhere is perfect. Nowhere is all peachy. They all have their disadvantages. Good night, J. Sutherland. I'd rather stay and water my grass. So Trinidad is the place to be. You see, I wouldn't even necessarily say that. But what I would say is that everywhere has its disadvantages. So wherever you're going, you must understand that you're going to have to take some difficulty wherever you're going. Anyway, anywhere you go, it's going to have that. All right. And in tune with some of what we're seeing, and as we were talking about last night, about the PH taxis, everywhere in the world have some kind of issues. That's correct. Everywhere in the world does. In tune with some of what we were talking about last night, the difficulties, one of the situations that creates this problem in our society is the whole PH taxi driver situation. And that's something I think our government could have a hand in helping. If Uber was still here, some of those PH taxi driving situations would have already been solved, but Uber couldn't stay for its own reasons. And now we still have this case where so many people are forced to use PH taxis, and there are many people who could be higher than thou and high and mighty and say, well, if you really have a problem with it, then stop using those PH cars. And it's easy to see, but in some places, PH is the only way you get out. That's the only way you get out. That's the only way you get out of your community. If you're waiting on a taxi, well, you'd have to walk. So, what would be the solution for that? Yes, without PH, many people in Trinidad would be stuck. And then, so there are some routes where there are no H cars, there are no taxis. And then there are some routes where the taxis close up early. By 8 o'clock, there aren't any taxis on the route. And if you're trying to come home late, well, are you going to walk that hour? Well, no, you aren't going to walk. You're going to take the PH car. And a young lady found out the difficulty in taking PH cars. This story, I just found this story kind of leading in so perfectly with what we were reading already. Search for driver after woman escapes sex attack. Police are searching for a man who attacked and attempted to detain a 26-year-old woman in Port of Spain early yesterday morning. The victim told police that she left her Laventille home about 1 a.m. And entered a silver Mitsubishi Lancer, assuming that it was a private hire taxi. She asked to drop near a roti shop on Henry Street. However, upon entering Port of Spain, the driver of the car locked all its doors. The woman attempted to step out the car, but the man held her as he drove through the city. The man brought the car to a stop at the Queen's Park Savannah near Whitehall. A security officer on duty told the man he could not park there. The man drove away and came to a stop further along the Savannah, where he began to assault the woman, police said. However, she was able to unlock the car and ran away. She ran along St. Clair Avenue and hid in a guard booth. People in the area saw the woman and took her to the St. Clair police station, where she made a report. The driver was not found. That is scary. That's a zebra who saw the lion running up to them. The lion snatched, grabbed, bit on a little bit, but the zebra escaped. I'm very glad she did. I'm very glad she did. Very glad. But that's to show you the difficulty there in trying to maneuver through this situation. And for someone like that, oh my, I've been logged out on Instagram. For someone like that, very likely she would have been heading in to work. That would have very likely been what she was doing. She wasn't there just, she very likely wasn't just taking that car for kicks. At 1 in the morning, very likely, I would suppose, what she would have been doing was going to work. The young lady very likely would have been going to work. And then, on your way to work, this person tries to kidnap you. On your way to work, this person tries to kidnap you. And at 1 in the morning, how else do you think this young lady would get to work? I don't think any taxis work Laventille at 1 a.m. I don't think that she would have found an H car working Laventille at 1 a.m. I just don't think it was possible for her. So in her situation, yeah, you could be high and mighty and say, well, yeah, she should not have taken that PH car. Yeah, make sure you only take taxi. But if you're going to work from Laventille at 1 a.m., what other option would you have? Really? What other option do you think would be there? Trinidad seems to be the easiest place to commit crime and not be found. That's one of the difficulties I find here. It seems like a lot of the criminals who do crime are not caught, are not punished, and that's what makes it seem like crime is beneficial. If I'm working so late, Ali had an organized job for me, yes, we should have something like New York taxi system. You see, if you're according to the level you're working at, if you're working on a level that's a little higher than minimum wage, etc., and you have a little say in the company and all of that, it may be easier to get those things. But if you're there barely holding on, you're barely holding on to whatever job you have. That's all you have. This job you're barely holding on to. You're in no position to go to that job and tell them, hey, you'll have to organize a job for me, otherwise I'm not working. You need this job. If you don't have this job, well, you're on the breadline. You need this job. You aren't going to make all of those fancy requests. It's just not going to happen. You're going to just say okay, and you're going to depend on the PH cars that run late. So in a situation, and that's just reality. In most of those situations, the people most vulnerable in this society, the people who don't have as much access to resources, etc., they are the people who experience the most difficulty in nearly every case. Right. They are the people who experience the most difficulty in nearly every case. Can you imagine hunting prey and becoming prey? For those going up Laventille looking for prey? Well, in that case, I mightn't mind too much. They may get what they well deserve. If you're going to hunt young ladies and you end up being hunted, then how much can I blame the hunters? They're doing a public service in that case. All right, the last set of stories we're going to talk about has to do with the ongoing case between CWU and TSTT, the difficulties that they are finding themselves in over there. And according to CWU, the union, 450 TSTT workers are going to be sent home. That is a lot of people. 450. That's the estimation that the union is giving. All right, let's pull up that story. More than 450 workers are expected to be retrenched from majority state-owned telecommunications provider TSTT. This, according to the Communication Workers CWU, the organization representing the employees, following a meeting between TSTT and the union on Tuesday. However, TSTT responded saying while it understands the public's interest in the talks, it does not consider itself at liberty to put in the public domain the details of these meetings or of the ongoing consultative process. But the CWU Secretary General Clyde Elder wasn't on all that security business. He said he met virtually with a TSTT manager and had to drag the number of employees who will be affected out of him. We were discussing how the restructuring was going to affect the membership. I basically had to drag it out of him. And then he said, your membership will be affected by 455 members. So this means 455 workers under the bargaining unit are earmarked to be sent home by TSTT once again. Yep, 455. Nathan, what's going on with Schoon? Well, the last thing I saw with Schoon is that the police are saying they are going to interview him again. So I guess we're waiting on that interview. Young men have no respect for women and some women make it worse. That's true. Back to cup and string days. I don't want to sound like a hater, but how people love offer KFC, so oh my gosh, I now get through my KFC always busy. Well, probably the busyness helps to attract more business. Elder said TSTT says it's losing money as voice, mobile, and landline revenues have declined. In a statement on January 17th, TSTT said for its financial year, which ended on the period March 31st, 2021, its revenue fell by $453 million, 18% less than the prior year. TSTT is 51% owned by a corporation sold through the investment holdings company National Enterprises Limited. So 51% of TSTT is owned by us, the people. The people own part of TSTT, the majority. He said he believes the retrenchment exercise will begin by the end of March. TSTT has not given us any date, as they said to the union that further consultations will take place and information will be made available as we go along. So TSTT isn't giving full information. In 2018, TSTT released 503 junior and senior employees, saying it had suffered operating loss a year earlier. But there's some more to that. There's even a little more to that. State Police Association President Derek Richardson, who also had a meeting with the company's management on Tuesday, told Newsday the jobs of his 36 unionized security officers were at risk. He suspects retrenchment was a ploy to replace TSTT's security unit with a private company. So he is accusing TSTT of pretty much kind of the same thing that the CWU was accusing them of. That they're saying they're going to retrench, but really what they're trying to do is get rid of their unionized workers. So they'd get rid of their unionized security officers, and then they could go private. They could hire some private company who is going to pay some Jamaicans to come into your place, and you pay them how much ever, and you don't even have to worry about this. You don't have to hire these security guards personally. In 2018, some 700 workers were retrenched as TSTT complained of financial loss. Ahead of retrenchment at TSTT, the government has dubbed WASA as overstaffed and vowed to privatize the Port of Spain port, while private sector pandemic pressures peaked last week with Scotiabank's layoff of 149 workers from 2 branches set for closure, plus 450 workers laid off by Caribbean Airlines last June. And we also know that Unilever has some workers planned to be laid off also. So it seems all around the board we are seeing layoffs happening. And what are we going to do about that? If that's the reality of where the economy is right now. The reality of where the economy is right now is that many of these companies cannot function on the same amount of profit that they were once getting. They cannot get that same amount of profit. So they need to make some kind of changes, and these are the changes they think they must make. That's crazy. I don't know what we could do about that. If the company is not making money, what are we going to do about it? How are you going to stop that? The company says they cannot make money, and what are you going to do? One of the things that the CWU Secretary General is accusing TSTT of is that he said what TSTT did was they took some of their most profitable parts of their business and put that under Amplia. So Amplia is running that most profitable section, and they're still running a profit. So what that would have caused is that what was left of the TSTT core group, that TSTT company, would be only the unprofitable parts, or mostly the unprofitable parts. So what they're intending to do now, all right, we stripped out the profitable parts, placed it in a separate company. We have this company now, and Amplia's profits cannot now come to pay the unprofitable workers in TSTT. They are in a separate company. Amplia's profits must pay Amplia, while TSTT must make its own profits to pay its own workers, and it cannot. So now what must happen is they must unfortunately get rid of some of these workers. Some of these workers are being seen as redundant, and the government is already talking about WASA being overstaffed too. So who knows? Maybe in the foreseeable future, the same maybe is being set up to happen at WASA also. The government can't even get out stimulus checks, so we know they're not getting any assistance. I can teach some people how to make money doing stuff other than having a job. There are many ways to make money. Many, many ways. Nathan, people need to understand that the company don't owe anyone anything. They're paying you for your time. I have a small business. If I can't pay my staff, I send them home. That's the fact. I do some business also, and that's about it. If you employ someone and you don't have the resources to pay them, well, sir, I'm sorry. In construction, you're running on jobs, you're running on projects. Not every project would need every single person. There are some people you just have to let go at some point in time. The project just does not have enough money to pay this person. And what are you going to do about that? You can't force the company to have to find the money somewhere to pay you. That doesn't make sense. Always that doesn't make sense to me. How are you presenting a deficit budget? We're going out there planning to lose money. That is insane. A country can't really legitimately function like that. It just cannot. It really cannot. All right, I was saying that was the last story, but the last story, the actual last story for tonight was, I'm just browsing over this, a series of stories that I checked up that had to do with the Taste of Carnival. So, the Taste of Carnival budget, what was initially said was 25 to 30, and that ballooned to even 35 million. But that announcement was made by the head of NCC. He said that statement though, and then the culture minister came out saying that, hey, we didn't approve any budget yet. I wouldn't be surprised though if the government kind of used this. They could have used this as a testing ground. They got to test the water to see how the population would treat all of this. So they didn't actually approve that 30 million budget quite yet. That was just the amount that NCC requested. That's the amount they said they need to run this project. But then when they actually came back to the cabinet to see what amount they were going to approve, the amount they actually approved was 15 million with a 5 million add-on. So there would only be a $20 million budget for the Taste of Carnival. Still quite a lot of money though. They say the majority of that money would go towards paying the artists and the performers and the panmen, etc., etc., etc. I guess that's left to be seen. Okay, that's all I have for now. If you're over on YouTube or over on Instagram, I am going to leave now. That's all I have for now. I really hope you enjoyed it and you were informed, educated, or entertained. And do tune in again for the next live, which is going to be tomorrow at between 9 and 9:30 p.m. So you could stay looking out between those hours right there. 9 and not those hours, that half hour period, 9 and 9:30. Catch me tomorrow p.m. in the evening between 9 and 9:30. So goodbye to YouTube. Goodbye.